Number 3 platinum producer was hoping miners would start returning this week after the company took its wage offer directly to employees, sidestepping South Africa's National Union of Mine Workers in a bid to end its 4-month strike. Lonmin's chief executive confirmed one employee was killed but provided no other detail on a conference call with reporters. The Solidarity Union, which mainly represents skilled workers, also said its members, said Lonmin, were being intimidated. Lonmin's larger rivals, Anglo-American Platinum and Impala Platinum, have also presented wage offers to employees after talks with the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union collapsed. A strike is the longest and costliest to hit South Africa's mines, highlighting the discontent among black miners who feel that they are still not reaping the benefits of the country's mineral wealth 2 decades after apartheid ended. It has had 40% of global platinum output and dented already sluggish growth in Africa's most advanced economy. Meanwhile, South African opposition leader Helen Zille has denied that her party's most senior black leader in parliament has quit because of differences with her. Lindiwe Mazibuko, the Democratic Alliance's parliamentary leader, said she was going to study in the U.S. Ms. Mazibuko's differed sharply with Ms. Zille last year over whether the DA should support affirmative action. A party got 22% of votes in May's election, the first since the death of Nelson Mandela last year. But the governing African National Congress won 62% of the votes, its 5th consecutive victory since the black people obtained the vote in 1994, ending white minority rule in South Africa. And when we come back after the break, we'll be checking in on other headlines around the world. A vote in Ukraine pits the government against Russia and pro-Russian separatists. Please join us again.
Every day you invite us to your home. Now we invite you to our homepage. Join Channels TV on social media. Hang out with us on Google Plus/Channels Television. Follow us on Twitter.com/Channels TV_NG. Friend us on Facebook.com/Channels Forum. And don't forget to like our page. That's not all. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, youtube.com/Channels Web, to get constant video updates on news and events in Nigeria and around the world. ChannelsTV.com, the news at your fingertips.
Welcome back. Following the outcome of a controversial referendum in eastern Ukraine, a separatist leader has thrown his weight behind a union with Russia. Roman Lyagin, head of the rebel Donetsk election commission, said joining Russia would probably be an appropriate step. Russia has called for dialogue in implementing the results, but Ukraine and the EU declared the poll illegal. The EU is also imposing further sanctions over Russia's actions in Ukraine. Russia has called for dialogue between the militants and Kiev with the participation of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe.
Russian rebels declared a landslide victory in Sunday's referendum held in Ukraine's Donetsk and Luhansk regions. But the Ukrainian authorities have dismissed the vote as a farce, and the European Union has criticized the referendum.
These votes, these attempts at referendums have zero credibility in the eyes of the world. They are illegal by anybody's standards. They don't meet any standard, not a single standard of objectivity, transparency, fairness, or being properly conducted as a public referendum or election. And indeed, the people organizing them didn't really even pretend to meet any of those standards. The important thing is that the Ukrainian elections go ahead on the 25th of May.
However, a Luhansk election commission official says residents overwhelmingly supported the referendum. Like officials in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, a spokesman for the Luhansk referendum said more than 90% of the residents voted in favor. Russia said on Monday it respected the outcome of the referendum and that the results should be implemented peacefully. The European Union, meanwhile, is set to step up pressure on Russia by taking a first cautious step towards extending sanctions to companies as well as people linked to Moscow's annexation of Ukraine's Crimea region.
let's talk more on this now. Andre Denesnera joins us live from the VOA studios in Washington. Andre, thank you for joining us on The World today. I know you've been monitoring the elections which took place yesterday in the two major cities in eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk. First of all, did they have a right to go ahead with this election, with the referendum?
Well, they had really no choice. I mean, they're the ones who called it, so they have to probably go through it. So that's the... but what I found quite fascinating is that the Russian President Vladimir Putin was against the referendum. So people are saying, well, is he really softening his position? I don't think he's softening his position. I think what he has done is given him a way out, in the sense of saying, look, I told those guys not to hold the referendum. They're going to hold it anyway. You see, I really don't have any power over them. That, I think, is one of the reasons why Mr. Putin took that view. And
the referendum did take place, and now Russia says Ukraine has to recognize the results, which voted overwhelmingly for self-rule. But really, what are the implications of this for Ukraine and even for Russia?
Well, this is going to be the question, isn't it? You have already one region, the Donetsk, saying we want to be part of Russia. Luhansk said that they will do the same. Remember the situation in Crimea after they've asked to be part of Russia. Russia came in and basically annexed it. Will Russia do the same? Really, who knows? That's the big question. And remember, they still have thousands of troops on the border with Ukraine. So it's a volatile situation. Everybody is calling, yes, for talks, but whether people will sit down at the negotiating table is a whole different ballgame.
But it does seem like the Ukrainian government is weak. First of all, it was Crimea that was given up. The referendum took place to be annexed by Russia, and now Luhansk and Donetsk, and they seem to be able to do nothing about it. The international community, of course, says they do not recognize the votes, but really it doesn't look like anything can be done about it.
Diplomacy is the, I mean, you are looking at one of two things, either or you're going to try to resolve it peacefully and diplomatically. And the key thing is for every faction to be willing to compromise and to discuss. And this I don't see right now. So it's a very volatile situation there.
Let's talk about some of the fillers you're getting from Russia, the new sanctions placed by the U.S. and the European community. Sanctions have been placed before. Are they having any effect?
And that's the question. They say that in the long term they will have an effect, yes. But you do have effect instantly. For example, those sanctions that are leveled against people and who have, for example, bank accounts in London or school children somewhere else, and they're prohibited from traveling. So that is certainly one aspect of the sanctions. Now the rest, we'll see. It's just a question of time, and it also will depend on how quickly and how whether the sanctions will be ratcheted higher and higher. And that if you continue doing that, inevitably it will really hit home, including in the ruling Kremlin.
Well, thanks a lot, Andre, for your thoughts and reportage on the matter. We'll be keeping in touch with you, of course, on the situation in Ukraine. Andre is with the Voice of America. He joined us live from the studios in Washington. And today marks the last day of India's general election, and millions have gone to the polls, with crowds turning out in the sacred city of Varanasi, a key battleground. Opposition BJP leader Narendra Modi is being challenged in this seat by anti-corruption campaigner Arvind Kejriwal. Votes are also being cast in 40 other seats in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and West Bengal states. The first exit polls are expected by this evening.
India's general election reached a climax on Monday as opposition challenger Narendra Modi sought a personal mandate on Varanasi, the holy city on the river Ganges, to govern by his modernized brand of Hindu nationalism. Modi is the first prime ministerial candidate to stand in the 3,000-year-old city where several religions mingle. Varanasi is a sacred Hindu city, but 1 in 6 voters is Muslim. Hindus believe that to die here brings salvation by escaping the cycle of reincarnation. A triumph in the city, one of 41 seats in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and West Bengal, which are voting on the final day of India's 5-week general election, will crown a grueling campaign by the 63-year-old Chief Minister of Gujarat to lead his Bharatiya Janata Party back to power after a decade in opposition. Campaigning mainly on promises to create jobs and restore India to a path of high economic growth, Modi, whose critics accuse him of harboring Hindu supremacist views, has largely steered clear of religion. His oratory skills and high-tech campaign have made him a solid favorite in opinion polls to unseat the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty from New Delhi and easily take Varanasi. Indian elections are notoriously hard to predict. However, due to the country's diverse electorate and a parliamentary system in which local candidates hold great sway and translating vote share into actual seats won is not always reliable. Results are due to be announced on May the 16th.
I'll be keeping an eye on the results as they'll be announced on the 16th. Now, China has deployed armed police patrol vehicles in Beijing after 3 attacks at transport hubs around the country. The 150 vehicles are tasked with countering street terrorism and fighting severe violence. Reports say petrol purchases would also be tightened, with buyers required to register with the police. The move follows station attacks in Kunming, Urumqi and Guangzhou and comes before the Tiananmen anniversary. The armed police patrols will be stationed at major road junctions and manned by at least 9 police officers and other assistants. And as we end the world today, here's something that's sure to remind you that no matter the obstacle, you can overcome. Time to take you now to Germany for a very challenging race. Last Saturday, runners climbed over mountains of old tires, swam in icy waters and jumped into muddy ditches in obstacle race in Nürburgring racetrack. Just take a look.
Organizers said 11,906 competitors took part in what they described as the world's largest obstacle race on Saturday, May the 10th, tackling 34 hurdles and obstacles laid out around the racetrack. During the race, the competitors ran a half-marathon distance and climbed 1,300 meters in height. Rain and cold temperatures added to the misery as runners slid into a huge pool of muddy water, jumped into muddy ditches, swam in icy water, and crawled through pools of foam towards the finish. Many made it more difficult for themselves by wearing fancy dress costume. At the finish, it was last year's winners Tom Schegel and Felix Grilak of Germany who crossed the finish line together again, timed at 1 hour 44 seconds. The women's winner was Carol Costa, who finished in a time of 2 hours 6 seconds.
And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. Do stay tuned. Sports News is up next.